In short, Animal Kingdom is about a particularly brutal clash between a gang of armed robbers and career criminals and police and a 17-year-old boy who finds himself caught between the two. I think I called the film Animal Kingdom because for obvious thematic reasons, which is that it's in a quote unquote sort of dog eat dog world. It's about a particular kid navigating his way through a kind of complex hierarchy of alpha males and protective females and predatory other males, and a kid navigating his way through that particular world. But on another level, I also wanted, whilst I talk a lot about a kid in this world, I also wanted the title to reflect the fact that this is actually a much larger movie than just a movie about a kid. It's a movie about an entire world. It's a movie about all sorts of different kinds of criminals and police apparatus. The things that made me want to make the movie, they were always about my inability to comprehend how people live lives like these where the stakes are so high, where making mistakes can mean the difference between life or death, or freedom and incarceration. I knew very early on that I wanted Ben Mendelsohn to play Pope because I knew that Pope needed to be the charismatic alpha male of that particular family. The Lecky character, for instance, was a different kind of a challenge because Lecky is a quiet character in a sense, in that he's buttoned down the way so many working detectives are. And he's a character that's so important to the way the story moves. And then those two guys, in a way, became the counterpoints in which to build the rest of the cast. James Freshfield had basically done nothing. He came to one of our massive open castings. I think we saw about 400 or 500 kids, and he'd done nothing before, and yet he had a skill set that was just incredibly surprising in a kid who was only 17 years old and was basically untrained. And you needed to find an adequate counterpoint, say, to Ben's character, which we kind of found in, which I kind of knew that Guy Pearce would have, because the character of Lecky is very quiet and buttoned down, as so many of these detectives are, and yet I knew that not only is Guy an incredibly dexterous actor, but that he would lend the character a quiet warmth. Luke was actually the first person to test for anything on this movie. Luke was someone who came in, and not only was he a very kind of dexterous actor, but I didn't know anything about him, and I was surprised at how real he felt, that he's a Blacktown boy, and he's got all sorts of stories to tell about, I think he's had shotguns held to his head a couple of times, being held up when he was working in pubs. So it was so interesting for me really early on, even after I'd cast these boys and then gotten them in for rehearsals and stuff, to see how I felt like at least in terms of that hierarchy, in terms of that power structure, that I'd cast the thing right, because even when those guys were just fooling around with one another, you could see that whole thing at work. That they've actually seen a crime film that works the way crime films kind of should, but yet is full of really quite surprising moments, surprising characters, and detail, I think. but that is still thrilling the way crime film should be, you know.
The chemistry's been great, and it's written in such an interesting, insightful way about the layers of connection between families. It's very well observed and a multi-layered script. Some great dialogue. I'm crazy about it. Yeah, and some of the roles are just cameos, like we've got the brilliant Dan Wiley just doing a few scenes and he's a knockout, and we've got Joel Edgerton being fabulous, and of course the marvellous Guy Pearce. What a dream he is. And Sullivan Stapleton, who's another one of my sons, and Luke Ford, who won the AFI last year for The Black Balloon. He's my youngest son, and there's a newcomer called James Freshville who's only 17, and he's acquitting himself very well as the troubled grandson. So yeah, it's a fantastic cast. I was looking forward to playing this role because David told me that he'd written it with me in mind, which is always a challenge. You think, oh, I've got a lot to live up to here. And I was expecting for her to be tougher, but the way he's written her and the way he wants me to play her, she takes you by surprise. She seems quite a normal woman, but after a while you realise that she is a sociopath and a psychopath, and she's bred all these psychopath sons, and yeah, and it's all the more chilling because she does seem kind of, you know, normal and everyday and even sweet. The testosterone is palpable on set. I'm surrounded by these young alpha males, and but they treat me as they would a real mother, and some of them even call me mummy. I think this film is very entertaining. The energy is enormous. All these wild boys, and there's a very dark side to it, and well, obviously, because there's murder and mayhem and unexpected sociopathic behaviour. But there's a kind of there's a thread of lightheartedness as well, as in real life.
What's interesting about the story, I think, is that you're looking at it through the eyes of a kid. You know, in this very dramatic and dangerous and violent world, there's a kid in the middle of it. You know, I thought David had done a really good job of, I guess, capturing the sort of nuances of the family dynamic. It's obviously a very particular family, you know, being one that's, you know, is involved in a lot of crime. So it's pretty different to most families, I suppose, that we know. But the way in which he sort of constantly reminds you that these are family members and that they relate to each other as other family members do, I thought was really just really well done. So it just felt very, very powerful. His writing's really powerful and really sort of simple and straightforward, but very effective. He's got a really good sense, natural sort of sense about him, you know. And I think he responded really well to David, and clearly brings just a very particular kind of energy about him, which is sort of hard to describe, but I think is great for the film, you know. He clearly, obviously, did see a cop in there somewhere. It was all in the moustache, you know. I think Lecky probably takes on a slightly parental role with Jay, but I think it's because he's doing his job and he knows that he's got to treat this kid well, and otherwise the kid's, you know, not going to be any help to him at all. So, you know, I think he's got the ability to see that, you know, the only way in with this kid, because the kid's frightened and concerned and confused and trying to sort of find his way in the world, in this very extreme, specific world. So I think Lecky knows how to handle Jay, or thinks he knows how to handle Jay in this particular circumstance. And that on some level inadvertently ends up being a bit of a father role. I think my first day I was there with Ben and Jackie Weaver and James, and I think Luke was there. And then one of the other days that I had, all the boys were there as well, including Sullivan, you know. And they, between them, create a very particular energy. There's a very boisterous, macho kind of sort of sibling rivalry kind of quality that obviously exists within the film, and it always, you know, creeps out onto, you know, into the catering tent as well, you know. It's a very particular quality about that group of people, you know. And then, of course, I'd have other days where it would just be me and James. So it was all very quiet, you know. And a really delightful crew, I have to say, really delightful quality on set. And that always comes from the director. But this film has a very particular style to it. It has a very... It's kind of about the potential energy rather than the kinetic, you know. It's just what's kind of sitting there under the surface, and really I think allows the audience to kind of go, what would this be like if I was in that situation, you know. And I find that fascinating.
Obviously there are extraordinarily strong echoes of events that have happened in Melbourne, and you know, that pings off a lot of things too. There are a couple of scenes in there that you know, I got very, just really wanted to do. Couldn't stand the thought of seeing anyone else do them, that kind of a thing.
Which scenes were they?
No, I won't say.
Okay.
I won't say. They're kind of just things that, you know, you kind of, if you get the opportunity to do various certain types of bad behaviour kind of things on film is good fun to do, and there's some, you know, there's some ugly stuff he does, and I just thought that, yeah, I didn't want to see anyone else do that.
Tus tráilers, visita mi canal.
Pope's a criminal that could make money back in the day, principally because he's an armed robber, but what essentially happened was that it became much harder and harder as technologies to thwart that came about, and the rise of you know, substance dealers, drug dealers, etc., etc. So he's a guy that's had his world left behind. Craig's actually a kind of a rival, you know, in some distant sense, and I can't help it. I don't know whether it's the animal kingdom thing, but I keep coming up with these bloody animal analogies. But you know, he's a kind of a young, you know, he's a young male lion, and he's capable. He makes more money than Pope, but he's off his rocker. Pope absolutely loves Darren, just loves him, and therefore he's extremely brutal with him. He's very, very nasty to him all the time, but he absolutely loves him, just loves him. That's his baby brother. He'd do anything to protect him, but he's completely brutal with him.
Animal Kingdom has a lot to say. It's got a lot of interesting kind of things to say about violence, I think, and about growing up amongst violence. It's also a world unto itself that is strangely kind of removed from the average everyday kind of Australian, which may give a real kind of you know, looking through a telescope at a new world kind of feeling for some people, which allows them to get a good kick out of the movie as well. But I think they might waltz in there and realise that what they're looking at through a telescope is actually a little bit more close and confronting than they expected. Baz is sort of at that point which you often see in a crime story, where he's chosen that he's starting to rethink what he's going to do. He believes things have gotten too hard, he's got cops sort of following him. But he's also a kind of a brotherly figure to Pope, almost like a big brother or an equal kind of friend brother to Pope, who is trying to gently kind of coax out of that world as well and say, hey, listen, I'm thinking about doing something else, what do you think? You know, it's not so easy for Pope to change his mind. So he's there for that reason, but he's also there on a story level, you know, and David and I discuss this, that Baz, while he's not your model citizen, is sort of, you know, a nice version of, you know, a decent guy, I guess, that he almost represents a possible father figure for Jay. There's a real family comes first edge to Smurf, and there's a real kind of weirdness to her maternal quality. I mean, there's a kind of weird, from what I could see, anyone said, there's a weird sexuality to the family. But there's a weird kind of idea of where that family sits in society, and whether you're a clean skin or you're not. And, you know, whereas a mother in the true sense of a maternal bond is there to completely protect their child no matter what, I think Smurf comes with some clauses that sees the whole family as number one, and then the child and her as, you know, next fiddle, whereas I think a mother really sees a child as number one, you know. His strengths as a writer and his strengths as a director seem to really complement each other really well. I think he's got a really great aesthetic, and it allows some of his writing to sort of just kind of soak into the atmosphere rather than stand out like pearls of wisdom. And David's writing, if you notice, is sort of filled with great little ideas here and there. He's got a bigger story going on, you know, and the bigger story of the film is rolling along, and here and there these little kind of flashbulbs go off.
You know, I'm quite an emotional and instinctive human being in real life, and I really had to pull that away. You know, I generally like characters that really express themselves. This character doesn't. You know, he's quite refrained, he's quite internalised, and you know, that was a difficulty plus a challenge plus a thing that I was quite drawn to. You know, that. And the fear of Darren, you know, the fear of being around what's going on and handling that was a big challenge for me.
Like, he has fun, you know, it's not all sort of cloak and dagger and, you know, heavy, sort of dreary drama. You know, Craig's got the light and shade. He's, you know, he... even though he'll do these bad things or you know, get a little shitty over some issues, at the same time he can laugh and have a good time. So it's quite, you know, it's quite nice to play.
Animal Kingdom is about a 17-year-old boy called Josh who is orphaned, and then he moves in with his criminal family members who he doesn't often associate with, and he starts to get inextricably linked in the sort of things that they get up to and the repercussions that come with it. He finds a male role model in Baz, and, you know, strangely in Craig and strangely in Pope, but all for various different reasons, like, you know, because they've each got
qualities that are admirable while having so many qualities that aren't.
Tus trailers, visita mi canal.
Yeah, you know, it's strange. And then when Lecky comes into the picture, he's just got all these, you know, different older males that he could model himself on, but he sort of gets lost in all of the different options and, you know, has trouble trying to find out where he fits.
And action!
Take it out on me. Don't take it. I didn't kill him.
I thought that's what we did. We take it out on whoever turns up.
Don't. Wait. Leave it alone.
All right, Joe.
Yeah, okay. Yep. No, I'm limp. Are you are? Okay. Andrew, get off me, Andrew. Fuck. Fucking Andrew. That's your name.
3, 2, 1, go.
Alright, I better take off. Keep the noodles on the stock for another minute or so and then pull them off. Although just taste them, you'll know when they're ready to come off, and then chuck the rest of the stuff in. You should be right.
Yeah, do I keep stirring?
Yeah, why not? I'll see you later, okay?
Yeah, so
It'll just be you and me. He won't be here. Also feels like an important beat given that stuff we were talking about before as well. So it's just quite. I can plonk it down on the counter or on the bed or something, and then kind of clock the shotgun. I mean, it could go in.
Yeah, I feel like
way.
it'd all happen at the same time. Yeah, breakfast, everyone. Oh, right, okay, what's going on? Yeah, okay, well, let's just let's go inside. You know,
Yeah.
all just kind of overlap it all.
Yeah.
Y tus trailers, visita mi canal.